Readers Entertainment Radio presents Booklights with your host, author Lisa Kessler. Booklights, where we're shining a light on good books.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning into Booklights today. We are going way into the future today, way out into outer space. And I'm so excited you're here today. You are going to meet Jeffery H. Haskell. And if you have never read his books before, you are in for a treat. He has quite a backlist for you to binge read through. And if you haven't met him before, I'll read his bio here so you can get to know him. USA Today best-selling author, Dragon nominee, and award-winning journalist Jeffery H. Haskell lives and breathes writing. A passion from a young age, he can't remember a time he wasn't telling stories. As a full-time author, he now pursues his life's calling with the help of his amazing family. The only thing he likes as much as spending time with his family, writing, and speaking about writing is also helping other authors be successful. He will continue to write until he dies, and possibly longer if allowed. Who knows if we upload our consciousness, right? And I did put a link to his website right there in the show notes. So you feel free to check that out, sign up for his newsletter, follow him on social media. And without any other delay, are you there, Jeffery?
I am.
All right.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Lisa. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for visiting with us today. So you have a long-running series, Grimm's War, and the newest book, The Longest Battle, is scheduled to release on April 28th. So do you want to tell everybody a little bit about the series? And this gives them just enough time to read from the beginning, right? To be ready for the new book?
If you're a fast reader, yeah, absolutely. Each book's about 100 to 120,000 words long. So if you are a quick reader, which a lot of people are, you'll be able to get through it no problem. It's a 9-book series with The Longest Battle coming out next month. But it's not the last book in the series. I have 3 more planned for after it, and so it's going to keep running. The series follows a naval officer, Jacob Grimm, as he goes from mission to mission with his primary ship, which is the USS Interceptor that he gets in the first book, and navigates politics and galactic intrigue and pirates and slavers and other nations that are trying to destroy them. And if you really like the naval warfare aspect of like Star Trek or Battlestar Galactica, or if you really like anything having to do with naval politics and the operations of a ship on day-to-day life, you'll absolutely love it. I have a lot of readers. Primarily, it definitely appeals to people in the military, but I get readers from all walks of life, and they all really love the camaraderie and the world building and the characters that inhabit the ship and the universe.
So do you have it sounds like you would have a large cast that continues through every book?
Yes, and every book has new characters because in the military you don't get the same people. You're not working with the same people day in and day out, year after year after year. You're always getting an influx of new people, and that's doubly true for the Navy, where you run in deployments. So every time your ship is deployed, you get returning crew and you get new crew. And I like to keep things fresh by bringing in new people and with new interesting ideas and personalities, and sometimes there's conflicts and sometimes there's not. There's a couple of long-running romances in the book, including with Jacob, who is in love with a spy. She goes about her business as being a spy, and yeah, it's all very interesting.
Spy?
Say again.
Does he know that she's a spy?
He doesn't know at first, but he does find out eventually.
Okay. Well, when you're writing these books, it kind of reminds me of remember ER? I used to love that show because
me too. Oh, I love that show.
They would bring in new residents, right? And then you'd have new things, and that kind of sounds like you're using that same cycle, I guess.
One of the things I always loved about Star Trek was you had your main characters that were always there, and then you always had fresh people every week. And I always wish they had expanded the main characters so that you had 20 or 30 characters that recurred every week, that you would always see the same people in the background, because ships are small,
Right.
And the Interceptor has about 100 people on it, so you get to know a lot of them over time.
And do you employ the same tactic as Star Trek with the red shirts?
No, I tend toward realism, and I have a very like a lot of my science is very realistic, even though there is some hand wavium with the fashion light drive and stuff like that. I try to keep everything grounded in a kind of like you could imagine this is how it would be in 1,000 years and how naval warfare would be, and you know people don't change, you know, like ideas change and politics changes and governments change, technology changes, but people are the same. And
Right.
so, you know, there's no crazy motivations. You're going to understand everybody's motivations and their desires and their wants and needs. And I try to focus on the characters and how the technology and the warfare impacts their lives. Because to me, that's the essence of military sci-fi, right? Is how soldiers and sailors deal with the technology of warfare in the future.
And do you, when you're writing this hard sci-fi, are you bringing in alien races as well, or is it just Earth has moved out into space?
Well, you know, there's lots of great series with aliens in it, and I didn't feel like if I put aliens in the books, I kind of felt like that would be the point of the books because that's momentous. You know, it would
Right.
be the book series would be entirely about the interaction with aliens, and I wanted it to be about more about humans and the human
Okay.
condition. And so there are no aliens. Well, not entirely accurate, but there are no aliens like 99.9% of the books. One of the
Okay.
characters has an encounter, but she's very stoic. She's a Marine, and so she doesn't feel the need to tell anybody about this possible encounter with an alien in her, you know, in her report. So um, I kind of left that as a tease for maybe down the road, maybe. But yeah, 99.9% no aliens, just you know humans killing humans. Unfortunately, as we're all
Uh,
very good at it.
Dang it. Well, so we're not going to have Worf and Spock and all those different races.
No, but if you look at the archetypes of the characters, you know, you Worf, you've got the stoic warrior. With
Right.
Spock, you've got the logical scientist. Those are very human archetypes. And, you know, great thing about humans is we come in all shapes, sizes, colors, and flavors. And you can have just this wild variety of people from stoic Marines to wildly emotional doctors and, you know, captains who are thoughtful and you know, don't fly off the handle at any given opportunity. So it's really when it comes down to it, those are all characters that exist in the world, and then in movies and TV shows that put some colorful paint on them, and you know, hey, that's your attention. But if you ever watch Stargate SG-1, you know,
Hmm.
Teal'c isn't popular because he has a little gold thing on his head. Teal'c is popular because he's Teal'c. You
Right.
know, he doesn't have to be an alien to be
Right.
awesome. You know,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what I'm going for.
Yeah. Spock, similar. You just
Yeah,
like Spock
absolutely.
because he's Spock, not because he's Vulcan so much.
And the Vulcans are cool. Don't get me wrong. It's just that you know once you introduce that kind of alien environment into a series, that is the series. And so I've got plenty of characters that people will love. You know, there's fan favorites. There's a Marine named Jennings who's very stoic, who doesn't speak a lot. That people absolutely love. I've got a French uh, pilot who flies a dropship out of the ship that people love. Of course, Jacob is is an amazing captain who I kind of crafted him around the idea of like when I was in the army, what made the officers that I really admired, what made them why I admired them. And so I kind of put all that into Jacob, like what would I want as an officer? And I get a ton of people. I've had people from the Naval Academy and from Army officers email me and be like, wow, you know, you should write a book on how to be an officer because this guy is what we want as officers. And so I feel like I did a good job there.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that kind of dovetails into, your inspiration behind the series. It sounds like you maybe have a journalism background, but what made you decide I need to write this captain in the Grimm series?
Well, when I was just out of the army, I went to college to be a journalist, and I loved writing stories about things that were happening in the world. Unfortunately, I ran into the real world, which was nobody who had the ability to afford to pay journalists wanted stories unless they were what the stories they wanted you to tell.
Right.
And so I kind of ran into an ethical problem of like, I'm trying to tell the truth here and you want me to tell your truth. And I don't believe in your truth or my truth. I just believe in the truth. And so that didn't really work out. I won a couple of awards but wasn't able to ever actually turn that into a career. And so I did a bunch of other stuff for years and years and years. And it wasn't until about 7 years ago that I returned to fiction writing and was able to turn it into something that, can feed my family and, pay the bills and fulfill me as a person, which is really important. If you have a
Yeah.
job, if you hate it, how hard it makes the rest of your life.
Yeah. And did you find the leap from being very truth and fact based to writing fiction? When I teach workshops, anytime there is a lawyer or a journalist, they struggle with that. You get to be God, you get to, build your world. And so how was that for you to shift gears from, the cold hard facts to making a fictional world?
Well, the thing that drew me to journalism was the storytelling aspect of it, because I had been telling stories my whole life. As a kid, I read comic books and I read every single book I could get my hands on. When I was in the Army, we had cargo pants, right? And they had these big cargo pockets. I always had a paperback in my cargo pocket. People joked about it like, oh, you're bored, you want something to read? Go see Haskell. He'll have a book or two on him. And I always did. And so for me, who played D&D growing up, who played all these tabletop role-playing games, who told stories, who wrote short stories, participated in online boards, forums about, games and stories and things like that, it was super easy. I didn't have a problem. My problem when I was writing as a journalist was paring everything down to just the facts.
Right.
And that was actually really, really, the writing was different, but it was really easy for me because I knew what I made up, right? So I could just be like, okay, these are the facts. And that's actually, ironically, what got me in trouble trying to find a job as a journalist, which was like, no, we want you to say the facts this way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wait, I'm not writing a book here. And so but I've run into that with other people who are lawyers and, military officers, and they want to write these like reports and call it fiction. And I'm like, no,
Right.
that's great. That's a starting place. Now make it interesting.
Exactly. Complete sentences are not actually storytelling.
The number one rule, in my opinion, the only rule of storytelling is don't be boring.
Right.
And you can get away with a lot of stuff if you're not boring. And man, there's nothing more boring than reading an after action report.
Yeah, you can take an exciting event that happened and make it dull. Have you always written sci-fi? You said that you have a comics background. Do you have other things, fantasies and things in your pocket, or are you just staying sci-fi for you?
I read all kinds of books growing up. I read all the D&D fantasy novels, the Dragonlance books, and Driz Jordan by R.A. Salvatore, which is one of my absolute favorites. He really is an inspiration for writing action scenes because the guy writes action like nobody's business. My first love, my true love, has always been science fiction. Robert Heinlein, Arthur C. Clarke, Orson Scott Card, just everybody. David Weber is probably my biggest inspiration because I loved his Honor Harrington books so much that when I got to the end of them, I was like, okay, well, where are the rest of the fleet science fiction novels out there? And guess what? There aren't a lot. There just aren't a lot. There's tons of infantry science fiction, tons of military sci-fi that's with the infantry, but very few that have any kind of realistic take on fleet science fiction. So that's what propelled me into writing this, is because I wanted more to read, and if I had to be the one to write it, I would. And I'm one of those authors who doesn't mind rereading his works. I actually reread them quite often to stay on top of it. Because if I do say so myself, I'm a pretty good writer. I have my doubts sometimes, but every once in a while I'll be reading something I wrote. I'm like, wow, I wrote this. I'm not bad.
That happens to me when audiobooks come out and I listen to the audiobook and I'm like, wait, I wrote that, so that is a cool.
Cheered up there. That's pretty good.
Yeah, go me. And the best is if you haven't read the book in a long time and there's a plot twist and you're like, what?
I'm so glad you said that because I thought maybe it was just me that forgot everything that he wrote.
No, no, it's like your brain downloads it so you can write something else and it's just gone.
Yeah, exactly. And I started my career back in 2016, and the first book series I wrote was urban fantasy under a pen name, and it got picked up by a publisher through Amazon's publishing imprints, and it did pretty good, but they didn't want the rest of it, so I ended up switching from that to I'd always wanted to write military sci-fi, but I was trying to like learn how to write, and so I didn't want to write in the genre I love and be crappy at it. So I wrote in other genres. And then I discovered superheroes, and obviously I love superheroes. I learned to read on Amazing Spider-Man because we were very rural where we grew up, and so I didn't have
Mhm.
school there. And so I'd get these comic books from the supermarket back when they had them. And I just wanted to know what the guy was saying to the redhead in the comic books. And eventually, Pete and MJ became my, role models for an amazing relationship.
Mhm.
And so I wrote 10, 11, 12, 14 superhero novels between 2017, and 2019. And they sold really well for indie. You can't really, you can't, it's difficult. There's millions of books published every year, and it's difficult to get traction as an independent author. It's even more difficult when you don't know what you're doing and you pick a genre that nobody reads. So while there are superhero novels out there and there are plenty of superhero authors, there are very few that actually sell books, regularly. And I was blessed to be one of them. My Arsenal, the Full Metal Superhero, and Wraith Superhero by Night sold, like gangbusters. I think I got to 800 in the store on Amazon once. With my Arsenal books, I made really good living, but I had to work really, really hard, like 60 hours a week, just to,
Right. You have to keep turning
you have
them
to
out.
keep, yeah, exactly. And 2019 rolled around, and I'm like, I love this, I love doing it, but I can't keep doing this. I'm 48 years old, and I'm burning
Can't
out.
keep up the pace, right?
And so I figured I was like, you know what? I've sold these books. They're making, tons of money for me, and people love them. They're all well reviewed. So maybe it's time for me to do what I originally planned to do, which is write military sci-fi. So I pitched Against All Odds, which is the first book in the Grimm's War series, to Aethon Books in 2019. They loved it, signed a contract in 2020, and I figured I'd have the first three books done by the end of 2020 because I was a fast writer. And COVID happened,
Mhm.
and this happened, and that happened, and yeah. So the books came out in 2022, and so I've released on average three a year since then. So the last 2 years, though, most of that was front loaded. I only released one book last year, and hopefully this year I get to release more. But it's I've had in that time since 2019, I have had I've had three children,
Wow.
and we moved too. So I have a total of six children, and um, so that makes life very interesting. So it keeps me from writing the 6, 7 hours a day I was writing when we only had two kids.
Right, right. Well, and traditional publishing is a lot slower than indie publishing. So the fact that you got traditional publishing to put out 3 books in 1 year, kudos to you.
Well, Aethon is great. They're a very different model. They know, both the guys who run Aethon Books, Brett C. Bruno and Steve Bollier, are just geniuses, and they know the business and they know what sells and how to sell it. Their marketing. I always tell people you can. I know this is audio, but you can see the cover of the first book behind me. You can see the shark on the nose of the ship. That my wife is my graphics designer and book cover designer, so she designed this
Oh,
and
that's
painted it.
cool.
And she did such a good job with it. Aethon actually put her under contract to do other covers for them. So she does between 9 and 14 covers a year for Aethon Books. She
Oh, very.
publishes 250 books a year.
Mm-hmm.
And so, between her expertise with a paintbrush and their expertise in marketing and it being a good book, it was just a shoe in to sell. And they also know that you create an audience by feeding it rapidly.
Right.
And, so the first three books came out a month apart. And then
Wow.
it was because I had to have all three done before the first one would be released.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was one every 6 months, and right now we're at one a year. And if you've written a long series, keeping it fresh and and especially when it's 100, 120,000 words, it's not easy. It's not. I'm not a monkey on a typewriter here.
Exactly.
It's not random words I'm putting down. It's got to be a good story for me to want to put my name behind it. And
Right.
you know, and it's so yeah, and it does really well. It blows my superhero stuff away. The first book's got almost 7,000 reviews on it, and they're in Barnes and Nobles now. The first one
Yay.
is, and it is really exciting. I have to do my first in-store Barnes and Nobles book signing last October, and that was really cool. That was an experience of a lifetime because I thought I would never get in Barnes and Nobles. I would never be traditionally published.
Right.
I write military sci-fi, which is not a big thing that's published by the Big Five,
Right.
and it's just through Athon's hard work and their doggedness that I was able to get me a deal with Simon Schuster to be distributed into Barnes and Nobles. So you can go to any Barnes and Nobles nationwide, and if they don't have it on the shelf, they can order it for you and have it in your hand in a couple of days.
I love that. There's so many great sci-fi shows. Do you have a dream that they'll, sell it to Amazon or Netflix, or is there going to be a Grimm's War show series, do you think?
I would love that. I absolutely would love that. I am completely options available. Anybody listening who knows an exec at Amazon or Netflix or whatever, absolutely. It would be a killer show. And it would be economical too, because I tried to keep the ship realistic, so it's somewhat claustrophobic. So you don't have these like huge sweeping, sets like Star Trek. The bridge in Star Trek's huge, and these
Right.
giant rooms in there. And like, no, that's not how it is with the Interceptor. It's more like a submarine in space than it is like a big city in space. And it's only 100 meters long, so it's not a huge ship. And it would make a fantastic TV show. I'm cinematic in nature. I wanted to be a screenwriter for a long time, so I kind of learned the art of visual storytelling. But I knew when I started writing novels, the key to a good novel is not what the person who's reading it sees, because they don't see anything except in their imagination. It's
Right.
what they feel.
Hmm.
And the ability to make somebody feel something while they're reading a book is 1 million times better than how you describe a gunfight or a battle or a love scene or whatever.
Yeah.
And that was really like the strength of books, right? Movies, the strength is what they see, right? In books, the
Right.
strength is what they feel.
Right.
And I think that anybody who anybody who had the ability to make a TV show or a movie, all they have to do is read the first book and go, okay, this would make a great movie or TV show. I prefer a TV show just because I feel like you could have very complex plots. They're complex in the sense that they weave together in a complex way. They're not hard to understand or anything like that. But so I feel like, if you did a 6 episode TV season, it would
Right.
be per book. It would be really, really interesting. And, you get time for everything to breathe and, for you to learn
Right.
who the characters are. And I'm not an action author. It's not like jam-packed roller coaster. There's a gunfight on every page and the ship's blowing up. I'm more the Clint Eastwood school of thought, where you have like a really good setup and then you build up toward the end, and then you have an amazing ending.
Right.
And, with a few things along the way to keep it interesting.
Well,
Um,
with your mention of the deployments and different people coming in, that's why I was thinking series, because like ER, every season they can add a few new cast members and,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. Well, what's next for you? What are you working on now?
Well, I'm finishing up The Longest Battle, which is book 9 in the Grimswell series, and that comes out at the end of April. I have 2 new series I'm working on for Athon books right now that they signed a contract for. One is called Endless War, and it's another military sci-fi, and it's infantry based. It's about a kid really, who leaves home to join the army because humans are being attacked by aliens, and he wants to protect his family, and also needs the money to protect his family because his mom is dying from a disease and they don't have the money to pay for the medicine. And so the
Darn,
signing
we still
bonus,
don't have universal health care? Dang it.
yeah. Well, until you have universal power, and universal food, you don't have universal anything. And so, he's from a rural planet, and he joins the army, gets that signing bonus, pays for his mom's medicine, and then he goes off to fight a war. I kind of based it off of Audie Murphy, who was 16 when he joined the army, and his family. He had like 7 or 8 siblings, and his mom was really sick all the time, and the last thing he wanted to do was have his siblings end up in a home, like a foster care spread throughout the country, And so
Right.
he joined the army, got that signing bonus, paid for his, mom's medicine. She ended up passing away anyways, but he
Dang
made
it.
enough money that he was able to get his older sister the money to take care of the kids so she could take them in. So I'm not following the story exactly. I was just inspired by Audie Murphy. He
Right.
was an amazing human being and one of the the most decorated army soldier of all time. And did some things that were so incredible that when they made the movie based on him, the studio said, "No, you can't put that in. Nobody will believe it." So, just to give you a reference, at one point he was standing on a burning tank. This is Audie Murphy in World War II. It really happened. He's standing on a burning Sherman tank with a 50 cal, shooting at the Germans as they were approaching, calling in artillery fire on his own position for an hour. And when they asked him about it after the war, about standing on a burning tank, was he worried that it would explode? He said no, because it was the first time in 3 years his feet had been warm. So that's kind of what the feel I'm going for the Endless War. And then the other book series I'm working on, I don't quite have a name locked down yet, so I don't want to say a name, but it's a space opera. It's very Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers. It's sort of a departure from military sci-fi.
Yeah.
Sort of a palate cleanser for me. They do something fun and less scientific and less
Do you get to have
realistic.
aliens in that one?
Yes,
Yeah.
all kinds of aliens. There's genetically modified people called genies. So there's these shock troopers who are basically tigers turned into men. There's these like real rhinoceros type people. There's cat people. There's just all kinds of really cool stuff, and it takes place on Earth and on Mars and Jupiter and Mercury and just all over the place. And it's a really fun kind of system hopping, rockets and ray guns kind of thing.
Love it.
That will be out either the end of this year or beginning of next year. I want to release the Endless War first because it's military sci-fi, and I want my second book series with Aethon to be the series, the same genre that I am
So all the
known
readers
for.
follow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have to ask because you were talking about all the different aliens, but have you watched Murderbot yet? That sounds
Yes,
like
I love Murderbot.
love Murderbot.
There's things I would do differently because I'm a creative type. So obviously I would be like,
Right.
if I was in charge, I would do things differently. But man, I love that show.
Yes.
Skarsgård just really did just a fabulous job with
His
him.
constant narration was fantastic.
Yeah. And one of the things the writing on that show did really well, and I haven't read the books, so I don't know, because the books are novellas, and they're like $15 for a novella, and that just calls me to do that. But I knew they'd be good just reading the description of the books. And so one of the things the writing on the show does really well is they turn a character that you first meet in the beginning who's despicable and you don't like them into somebody who makes you cry at the end of the season.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, that's so sad. And it's that wimpy doctor, and I just, I love that series.
Yeah.
And, I watch all kinds of sci-fi, non-sci-fi, and sometimes I like a lot of it and sometimes I don't. Like, I'm in the minority here, but I could not stand the Battlestar Galactica reboot that came out in 2006. I was a huge fan of the original. I am not really big into Shades of Grey. Because despite what people like to think, the world is not filled with shades of gray. It's filled with black and white stuff that we then try to turn into shades of gray to excuse our own bad behavior. And, so this idea of making everything dirty and gritty, Game of Thrones and everything, I just, it's incredible to me. I just cannot stand it. I want my heroes. I like my heroes. And heroes fail. It happens. But I want them to have heroic, intentions, not just be these gritty, dirty, horrible, evil people who just happen to be doing the right thing because circumstances made them.
Right. Because circumstances aligned with their bad idea.
Exactly. And I like Bad Guys Gone Good as much as the next person. Like Punisher, I love Punisher, but Punisher exists in a world where there are lots of evil mafioso people who escape justice, and he brings justice to them.
Right.
And by Punisher I mean the Marvel Comics character, the Punisher, Frank Castle, and that works in context with the world that they've created for him. I want heroes like Captain America who do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, and then make it all work within the moral context of what they do. And I absolutely love that.
Right. Well, before we run out of time, how can readers get in touch with you when they're super excited and they read the book? And are you on social media? Should they subscribe to your newsletter? How do you communicate with your readers?
You can subscribe to my newsletter. I don't do it a whole lot. You get some free stuff if you subscribe to the newsletter. I do send updates out every once in a while. I don't find the newsletter to be a particularly effective way of communicating with people. I am on Facebook. You're more than happy to come on Facebook. You can just search my name. I'm the only Jeffery H. Haskell there. All my contact information is in the back of each book. You can email me, jeffrey.haskell@gmail.com. Happy to talk to anybody. I get a couple emails a week, a couple Facebook Messenger requests a week. I got one the other day from a retired colonel in the Army, and he was thrilled to have found my books. And I live for that. I love that. I'm an extrovert. I love talking to people. You want to talk about my books? I will talk about my books. You want to talk about Star Trek? I'll talk about Star Trek. You name it, I'll talk.
I always like to remind people that you think authors are really busy, but sometimes we're busy struggling, and one, couple sentence message from you that the book made a difference can finish the next chapter,
Yeah, absolutely. It's very inspiring for people to write you and not just say, hey, I enjoyed your book, but say, hey, I enjoyed your book and this is why.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can make a difference in somebody's life, that's what I'm doing this for, right? Besides the money, which is really nice.
You do need to eat. Authors
do need to eat. Yeah.
Yes.
But and I do love to entertain. I mean, I hope I'm entertaining people, but I don't want to just entertain. Mm-hmm. I want people to walk away from my books feeling like my book has made a difference in their life. And I know that's pretty, presumptuous for me to say, but I always think of I watched Gladiator in theaters when it came out, and that movie changed me as a person. Mm-hmm. I felt like a better person for having watched that movie because I felt like I could strive to be like Maximus. And that's kind of what I'm going for, is I want you to feel like these are people you can look up to and you could strive to be like, to be inspired to be like. As much as I like the Punisher, nobody is inspired to be more like Frank Castle. Nobody's inspired to be like Darth Vader, but you are inspired to be like Peter Parker or Captain Kirk or any of the other heroic characters. Mm-hmm. Try to do the right thing no matter how hard it is.
Right. I love that. Well, thanks so much for being here today. It was great chatting with you. And everybody, go out and check out the Grimm's War series. There's a lot of books for you to catch up. And next month, The Longest Battle will come out. And it sounds like there's 3 more books after that too, right?
Yes. To be announced on the names in the States. But yeah, I'm under contract for 3 more.
Yay. All right. So everyone go check it out. Remember, it's super important that you buy books when they come out, because that is what makes publishers release the rest of the series. So don't wait for the whole series because you will not get it.
Pre-order the next one. If you like the series, pre-order the next one, because the number of pre-orders I get on each book determines if they're going to put me under contract for another one.
Right.
So once my pre-orders fall under a certain threshold, they'll be like, okay, your next book is your last one in the series. So if you like the series and you want me to keep writing it, you got to buy it and pre-order it.
That's right. Pre-order that next book. Amen. So
no amount of advertising is worth you telling your friend about a book you liked.
Yes.
That is the best advertising possible.
Yes. And don't forget to leave a review. Even tiny short reviews help new readers find new authors. So definitely leave a review as well. Thanks so much for being here, Jeffrey. It was great chatting with you.
Thank you, Lisa. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today, and it's been a lot of fun.
Thanks for joining us on Booklights. Be sure to connect with us at www.readersentertainment.com for articles, blogs, videos, and podcasts that matter to readers.